Vernal pools are temporary wetlands that serve as essential breeding grounds for amphibians and countless other creatures. In this film, we'll explore the species that rely on these pools and what we can do to protect them. On rainy spring nights, amphibians make their way to vernal pools to breed, but roads can be a deadly obstacle.
So one thing that people can do if they want to protect wildlife, especially vernal pool creatures, is to try to avoid driving on dark, rainy nights in the early spring, because that's when our salamanders, our spotted salamanders, and our wood frogs are crossing from the uplands to the vernal pool. So sometimes there's a road in between where they live and where they're going to breed, and they have to cross it. And they're no match for cars. And so trying to avoid driving as much as possible, especially if you know a road is going past a wetland, is a great way to try to help protect vernal pool species. You can also work with an organization to do vernal pool crossing assists. And so that's when people actually come out at night and will literally escort or help the salamanders and the frogs across the road. And that also includes, spring peepers, even toads and other creatures that are crossing on those warm, rainy nights.
Spotted salamanders return to vernal pools each spring, laying their eggs in the water before heading back to the forest.
Spotted salamanders are another vernal pool obligate, so they breed only in vernal pools. On warm, rainy nights in the spring, they will travel from the uplands, the adults. They'll come to the vernal pool and mate. The adults will leave, and the female who has laid the eggs will attach them to vegetation, just like the wood frogs, so they don't float around in the pool. She actually will pick up something called a spermatophore, which is a sperm packet that the male leaves behind, and use that. Like the wood frogs, they will have explosive and rapid development in order to be out of the pool by the time it dries up in July or August. So they'll go from an egg to a larvae, which again looks just like a frog tadpole. It's also a tadpole. They'll become a metamorph, which they will grow their legs. And so they'll actually look sort of like a fish with legs for a while. They'll have a tail, but they'll also have legs. And they'll be breathing water this whole time. And then when they're ready to actually leave the pool, they will actually start to breathe air. And then they will disperse into the woods for the rest of their year until it's time to come to the vernal pool again next spring and start breeding.
Wood frogs lay their eggs in large clusters, hatching into tadpoles that must grow quickly before the pool dries up.
So this is a wood frog egg mass in here. And again, it's differentiated from the spotted salamander egg mass because it's bumpy on the surface. It doesn't have a protective membrane around it. And then the little black things inside, those are eggs.
Each wood frog egg mass contains between 1,000 to 1,500 eggs. After laying the eggs, the adults return to the uplands to spend the rest of the year. Similar to spotted salamanders, the eggs in larval wood frogs develop rapidly, and then typically between mid-June and early July they leave the ponds as juvenile wood frogs and spread into the surrounding woodlands. Vernal pools support an entire ecosystem, providing food and shelter for insects, amphibians, and other wildlife.
In addition to the wood frogs and the spotted salamanders, we also have a lot of macroinvertebrates and other insects that use the pool. So we have everything from dragonfly larvae, which actually start out in a vernal pool. We have the catisfly, we have fingernail clams, isopods, and a whole host of other things that live in this pool that are at the lower end of the food chain and support our spotted salamanders and our frogs.
Fairy shrimp are a vernal pool specialist, living only in these seasonal wetlands and completing their life cycle in just 2 weeks.
So I have a couple of fairy shrimp in here. Fairy shrimp are a vernal pool obligate species, which means they only breed in vernal pools. And they basically look like a little shrimp swimming upside down. And their locomotion, they use these little abdominal muscles that also serve as their respiratory features and somewhat see-through. They're very short-lived. They live about 2 weeks.
Some vernal pool creatures use camouflage and shelters to avoid predators, blending into their surroundings. Catisfly larvae build protective cases out of leaves and twigs, carrying their homes on their backs until they mature into adult insects.
These are catisfly larvae. The larvae construct this casing around them out of vegetation. It's like a little protective home, and they chew up pieces of bark or leaf or stem and create a little tube that they crawl into, and then they can move around with it on their back, kind of like a snail with a shell. And it protects them from predators, and then when they mature, they actually turn into a fly or a moth. But anyway, this is the larval form of it, and they hang out in vernal pools, and they're really neat looking.
Vernal pools may be temporary, but their role in the ecosystem is vital. By protecting these habitats and the creatures that depend on them, we help maintain a delicate balance in nature, whether through conservation efforts or simply being mindful of their existence. Every small action makes a difference. The next time you pass by a quiet woodland in early spring, remember, life is thriving in the water, even if it won't be there for long.